It's some 34 minutes off the top of the hour. Thank you for staying with us. And at this juncture on the show, we kickstart our big stories. We have a one-on-one conversation this morning with Andrew Egyapa Mercer. He is Deputy Minister for Energy, Member of Parliament for 2nd D. And what I love about this gentleman, he frees his mind. He says it as he thinks it. I disagree with him a lot of the time, but I love the fact that when he has an opinion, he shares it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Andrew Egyapa Mercer as we talk everything related to energy and many other outstanding matters. I don't want to give him a fair advantage and let him know some of the areas I'll be taking him into. I'll be taking him into deep waters at a point. Andrew,
because you didn't give me any subject matter for.
So, you know.
It's actually going to be a large.
Oh no. Energy.
Good morning. It's always good to see you.
It's good to have you. It's been a while.
Yeah,
what has Andrew Egyapa Mercer been up to? I've seen you here and there, on a few beats in Parliament. But what have you been up to?
Well, let me say good morning to our cherished viewers this morning, and even before we commence the engagement, wish all of us Merry Christmas, and hopefully a prosperous 2023. Obviously, 2022 has been a difficult year for all of us as a nation. Yeah. Our economy hasn't performed optimally as we all had expected, arising mainly out of issues that are external, of course, some internal. But we're where we are, and the government has had to take difficult decisions to try and bring the economy back on stream. And I'm hopeful that with the plans that have been rolled out under the Ghana Cares program and the COVID revitalization economic plan that the Ministry of Finance is working with the IMF to implement, we'll see some positive signs next year. It's already started. We've seen some appreciation in the city. Fuel prices have largely
not some.
Come down.
It's been quite an appreciation of the CD. Though I think, was it yesterday or 2 days ago? It lost about some 8%. Yes, but it's been amazing, for lack of a better word.
For me, the most important thing is that we go back to the era of stability. So businesses can plan. People can plan their lives around knowing that it won't be
fluctuating too often
in the manner that it did, sometime in the course of the year. But Merry Christmas. Like I said, above all, we have life. So we thank the good Lord Himself for His abiding mercies.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance. I don't know whether we'll get to meet or speak to each other before the New Year. So I'm adding it in case we don't.
Much, and I wish you the same.
Great. So you started on the trajectory of some of the gains we've made. We'll get to some others, but even staying on the currency bit, later I'll go back to your constituency because I actually wanted to start the conversation off from there.
Sure.
But some have also said that there are factors, causing this at this time of year. Remittances, end of year, not too much being bought, so it will not pressure our CD in terms of foreign currency. And people have said, there are a number of factors. People have said that the real test will be in the first quarter of next year, when we know that, from January, you always see the CD struggling. It's coughing, spasming, and all of that. From January to March, if we're able to peg it at a certain rate and it stabilizes, then we can say, okay, at least we have some control over that. I know with the fuel prices, they are also going down. They've gone down by quite a lot. I'm looking forward to purchasing fuel this week because formerly, in fact, the last week when I bought it, it was still pretty high. But I know there have been some decrements, so I'm looking forward to that. We know that the bulk oil, the importers,
that's right.
I hear now they are able to access a lot more funding, up to about 80%, because at a point it was far lower than that. So some gains have been made, but inflation is still, in fact, that is a concern for me because it shot from, I think, 43 point something to now 50.3. And that was a jump. It's been increasing marginally, but the one from October to November was not healthy. All of these, we're trying to see whether that's 17, because for about 17, 18 months, it's been a constant uptick in inflation. So something to celebrate, but also some areas to be concerned about. As we enter
Absolutely, without a doubt. The factors that inform the fluctuation of the currency, really, like you said, are multifaceted. Indeed, if you look at the trend between 2017 and 2021, the depreciation was in the region of an average of about 4%.
Right.
But we saw a 56% depreciation in 2022 alone. So it tells you that this year has been an outlier. Immediately at the beginning of the year, when Parliament unfortunately did what I call the unthinkable, in the sense that the legislation that regulates our budgetary approval process as a Public Financial Management Act was breached.
How so?
Section 22 of that legislation provides that by 31st December, 3 things ought to happen.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Budget ought to be approved, the appropriations ought to be approved, and every other legislation that would go to implement the budget ought to be approved. It's a mandatory provision. We approved the budget, we approved the appropriations, and refused to approve the law that will back the expenditures that we have approved. That obviously had consequences. Of course, it led to a run by investors, because if there's no assurance that government was going to generate the revenues to pay for their investments,
Right.
they're going to react. And we saw the run on the city right from the beginning of the year. The downgrade by the ratings agencies based on non-assurance of the revenue measures that had not been approved, and all that. And of course, subsequently, the Russian-Ukraine war, that then led to global supply chain disruptions, led to a spike in energy prices across the world. You saw the inflation beginning to take a deep, hike. Subsequently, you come back in March and you approve revenue measures. By May, when it's rolled out, the performance is not as expected. And of course, investor confidence dips again, and you see a further slide, culminating in the decision by government to then go to IMF, because all the policies that they had rolled out to avert our return to the IMF had been jeopardized. And of course, that in itself also led to fears. When is the IMF program going to come on stream?
So barring all of those things,
all
that
those
happened,
are
yes.
absolutely.
And these are factors
These
that
are clear factors.
any administration would have to deal with at some point.
Of course, no
you
doubt
speak
at all.
about the credit.
And so before you come in, you see that when government then announced a successful staff level agreement with the IMF, that led to some reaction in the market when the gold for oil policy was announced, and agreements have indeed been executed. And
Some have asked whether the gold for oil thing is still on the
still
table,
on. And
because
you see,
it appears
it's not-
now that the currency has stabilized.
It's important for me to clarify.
Government seems to be
It's
backtracking.
In fact, the first consignment of finished products under that program is going to come in, I believe, on the 10th and 11th or 10th and 12th of January.
Right.
Okay, and to add, it's not a substitute to our existing oil trading mechanism. It's only complementary. Okay, fuel traders will still source for dollars, but then because this is largely a G2G arrangement, G2B arrangement, the intention is to help so that the pressure on the dollar would be brought under control. And so, to answer the issue regarding what would likely happen in January, I think that with all the policies that government has rolled out, normal business people who require dollars would have sufficient enough dollars available within the space. And I expect that as we go into Q1, the full program will be approved by the IMF board, of course, subject to all the conditions that government has to meet, including the debt exchange program and the, conversation with the external creditors and all that. So I'm pretty much
some
hopeful.
groups have said that in the best case scenario, we could get a deal with the IMF, a program or a program approval by January, and that worst case scenario, we could get it by March. But the longer it takes, the more painful this process is going to be.
I don't think that of course, we signed the staff level agreement.
If we could have had a program by now,
yeah,
we would have wanted it.
Absolutely, so without a doubt.
Indeed, the longer it takes.
It's not an event, okay? It's always a process that has to be followed through to its logical conclusion. And government is committed. The IMF have indicated that they are committed because the sustenance of the Ghanaian economy is important not only to Ghana, but to the global community as well, including the IMF, of which we are a paid-up member, okay? And so it is my expectation that we'll do whatever it is that we have to do as a government to meet the conditions that then will then trigger the submission of our plan to the IMF board for approval. I'm positive that latest by end Q1, all that would have been concluded for an approval to be obtained, just so that we can bring some confidence back into the economy to allow government to focus and take us back on the growth path that we're on before the advent of the global pandemic that has largely jeopardized our economy.
Right. Before we get into much harder issues, I just want us to do this soft one and clear it. Your constituency. Christmas is approaching, New Year is approaching. What's 2nd D like? Just give us what have you been up to? What is 2nd D like? What are the problems? Usually when members of parliament come here and we ask about their constituency, they paint a picture as though everything were rosy. What are the problems in your constituency? What are some of the gains in 2022 you've made in 2nd D?
Of course, this year has been largely, uneventful, if you like, in terms of real activity on the ground, because some road projects that were started because of difficulties in government finances, it's ground to a halt. I'm hoping that
we heard recently, just yesterday in the Daily Graphic, quite a sum of money paid to some contractors.
Mainly Get Fund.
Right.
I'm hoping that the road sector would also receive some injection of funds so that most of the contractors who have been awarded contracts can go back on the roads. In all honesty, I couldn't do community engagements this year because my own schedule at the ministry was a lot of activity that then took me in and out of town significantly, but also to go back and tell them that, look, the same state, especially my constituents in the Bakechi, Kwekuma enclave. But I can assure them that we would do whatever it takes to make sure that the contractor is paid, funds permitting, so that their roads can be done. Of course, Fiankwanta Hospital redevelopment has started. The Adiambra Road to Takrady project is started. Of course, the contractor has gone for a break, Christmas break, and we expect that they will get back, as soon as the holidays are over, and move the agenda forward. But beyond that, it's largely quiet.
It's been a quiet year.
Yeah, it's been a quiet year. Across the country.
Right.
And so hopefully, when we are able to put finances of the country back into shape, then we can go back and
do more.
Do more.
So basically, that would imply that many constituencies have been starved this year, partly on the back of the economic downturn that we
absolutely.
We can't run away from that.
Of course. You still see activity going on. Coming in, I was driving on Labadi Road, still being worked on.
Yeah.
But the level of activity that we saw 2017, 2018, 2019, of course, we saw some recovery in 2021. Then 2022 also saw a dip. So as we begin the recovery, I'm sure that a lot more will be done so
will be
that
done.
we can deal with many of the issues that confront our people. I recall not too long ago I was at a radio station in Second D, and then I made a comment to the effect that problems arise every day, and so you can only do as much. That even if you spend 100 years, you can't resolve all the problems in the concern that was taken on. People took a swipe at me for stating what, in my view, really is obvious. Because, Ben, in our own personal lives, we are unable to solve all our problems, but we do our best.
Yeah.
And that is my commitment
to your people,
to my constituents, of course, to the good people of this country, that we always do our best to work to improve the lot
let me just find out from you. You said something interesting that partly your schedule as a minister also impacted in a way, or humbled you in terms of how much you could have done in your constituency. Be brutally frank with me, because academics have said this. There have been calls. Do you think it is time for us to decouple parliamentarians from ministerial positions? Do you think it is time for us to go past that proclivity, if you like, no smaller word is coming, for selecting so many ministers from parliament, so a parliamentarian can focus on parliamentary business? Do you think it is high time we did that? Because you're not the first person telling me this. A lot of your colleagues come and they say the same thing. Do you think it's time to do that?
I've said before that I really don't, pretty much indifferent about that conversation or where it ends. Okay, but I don't think that the dual function in itself is not possible to perform. Of course, I mean, your time...
No, I don't think people are saying it's impossible. Obviously, so many of you have done it, some have done it so well. But the point is, what it takes away from you in what you could have contributed to Parliament.
Of course.
You have to read,
of course,
all of these documents that come through, for now, for example, budgets and all of that.
Not a problem at all. So, for example, the Westminster system where ministers are all MPs, not some. Every minister is a member of parliament. It's a dual role, and they perform it, to the best of their ability. But
their
that is not
systems are different. They enhance. They actually, the offices available, the research available, all of that.
I agree.
We are not there yet.
So, are you then suggesting that we should put it in abeyance until we get there before we get back?
It's an option.
Well, it is an option, but there's other option also is to build the systems, the institutions to provide the support. Okay, and I'm sure that to the extent that we have adequate budgetary provision that then allows us to do that, that's exactly what is going to happen. But I don't think that, ministers being members of parliament, it gives you a sense of being broad-based, knowing what it is that is happening in the legislature and executive, and applying yourself to ensure that there's some level of seamlessness in our governance architecture. But of course, if the advocacy for a split also wins, I really don't think that in itself would be bad as well.
Let's talk energy before we broaden the conversation and get into other sectors. Where do we find ourselves when it comes to energy now? And I would go back to Dr. Kwabena Donko, and back then his promise to end Dumso, and within 2015, when he was not able to do that, he stepped aside.
But you see,
but that situation. No. Let me just end with a question. And they went on to deal with the situation, and at least now all of us have some stability.
Well, how did they deal? How did they deal with that?
We all know. I don't want us to go back into that.
No.
You see, because we all know that the former administration dealt with the problem. At the time, in 2016, of course, we had it for 3 years plus, and we were all averse, tired, and maybe we voted along those lines. But they had dealt with the situation as of when they were leaving office. But the question I want to actually pose to you has to do with where we find ourselves in terms of our energy utilization. We had been told a lot of the time that we had this excess power. We've been told now that we are channeling that excess power to other countries, among others. What is the update on that?
We should not have been in any doomsday in the first place.
We shouldn't. We had doomsday even under Akufo, did we?
Oh,
not?
wait, of course. But
Did
that's
we
why
not?
we did.
It was a long-standing problem. Even under Rawlings,
wait.
we had some of that.
But of course, it wasn't for 4 years. Correct? And that's why President Akufo added the Bui project, which then came on stream in 2015. No, in fact, the Bui project came on stream in 2013. And this is a graph that shows you clearly that Ghanaians should not...
Our viewers unfortunately can't see that.
Yeah.
They will not be able
to. But you can confirm that
right.
Ghanaians should not, under any circumstances, have slept in darkness for even 1 day. But this is it. The red line is your peak. The thick blue is your installed. And the light blue is what was added from 2015. So show me from this presentation whether we should have slept in darkness. It was a financial issue, indeed, and in fact, the former president himself, if you recall, told the good people of this country that as a result of some damage to the pipeline that was bringing in gas from Nigeria, the pipeline only carried fuel, gas, that had been damaged by some ship anchor, was leading to our inability to procure gas from Nigeria. I'm saying that gas that was coming was fuel to power existing plants. All those plants had alternative fuel sources. And so, to prevent us from sleeping in darkness, we had to procure those alternative fuel sources to power the plants. We didn't have the money. So the 4 years of darkness that you and I slept in was a financial problem.
The same way we have a financial problem now with...
But at least the lights are on.
No, I'm just asking you. The same way we have a financial problem now. The lights may be on.
See?
Ghanaians have gone through
the point that I'm making...
The currency exchange...
Benjamin,
no.
Wait.
Let's expand it.
Wait.
In that case, it was In this case, it is people's businesses that are folded up.
Please.
It is
4 years,
an inflationary rate that is biting.
The 4 years.
It is fuel prices that have hiked up.
I don't want us to do an MPP NDC comparison. But I'm using the data to point to you that don't be deceived with anybody telling you that they solved any doomsday problem. Because in fact, their so-called solution rather compounded our financial problem.
Okay. So the excess power and what we had to pay for it.
Precisely the point.
But in our day and age, especially as a country that wants to industrialize,
I agree.
How can you say you
No
have
problem.
excess power and you can't use
No
it?
problem. The point is this, that you always need energy. But the fact that...
And our population has grown in...
No, I agree. In fact, the demand, and if you look at the data, okay, you'll see that it is only in 2019 that all the power that was added between 2015, really, we began to consume it.
Right.
But the fact remains that we had to pay between 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and in fact in 2020 for all this power.
Tell me something
We
very
paid for it.
quickly.
So
Very
that
quickly.
talk-
What would you have preferred? To have the power, though you were making payments for it,
you see-
or to have got to this point and still not had the power?
No.
Which would you have preferred?
That's why there's always an energy forecast plan that you work with.
Right.
That then guides when you add capacity. Okay, so that you do not incur all those costs in excess of 17 billion that government had to find money to pay for. But when you talk, they say you are providing excuses. How is a fact that is being represented amount to an excuse? How?
So finally,
No, I want to know how.
Right. I just want to find out. So, as of this point, based on all that I've heard, we are sending some to neighboring countries in the West. Are we consuming the full range of the excess power that
Not all of
that
it.
we used to
There's
have?
still some excess.
There's still a surplus.
But the quantum is not as huge.
About how much are we using now?
Oh,
80%, 90%, 50%?
Well, about 80%.
About 80%.
Absolutely. And so 85% of that.
Okay.
And so some of the generation that had been contracted, that this government put a hold on. Of course, they hadn't built the plants at the time. We have asked some of them to begin the process of onboarding so that by 2026, okay, when the forecast indicates that we're going to begin to have shortages if we don't add additional capacity, then it's met. Of course, we're planning into 2030 with respect to our renewable energy and all that, how we scale it up. Only yesterday, my colleague, Honorable Reku, launched the Ghana Scaling Up Renewable Energy program at Accra City Hotel. So those are the things that we as a ministry are doing to ensure that the lights that have been on since 2017, save for instances where we had to do NCC, as my minister aptly put it, strengthening the transmission infrastructure. The facility that is KFW have given us for 161 kV line, Accra Kumasi transmission infrastructure improvement that we're rolling out. Pokwasi has been done, Malam has been done. We're working on the Western Corridor. Kumasi Bogatanga has been done, and all that is to strengthen the transmission infrastructure so that we can, cut down on the technical losses that exist within the space. Some program that is being rolled out to introduce private sector participation in the energy distribution space, the last mile, that we have begun the process of engagement with ECG yesterday. My minister met with the ECG unions and began the conversation, stakeholder engagement on how we roll it out to improve the performance of ECG. Of course, so far we haven't seen any queues at the pumps. Availability of crude, finished products have been available, except that, as we all saw during the course of the year, prices shot up, but they are beginning to normalize. Okay, significant reductions have been seen at the pumps that we expect will translate. Already, the transport owners have announced a reduction of 15.3% in transport fares, and so we begin to see the impact of the reduction in prices. So, by and large, everybody would attest that the energy sector has been robust. We've significantly delivered on our mandate to the good people of this country, and my expectation that in the coming year we'll do more to ensure that at all times there's stability of electricity generation and distribution for Ghanaian households and businesses.
But let's talk about, especially as we're talking about our capacity now and the fact that 80 to 85% is a good thing. I'm sure over time we'll find other uses for the excess capacity. But let me find out, in terms of our energy mix, especially in a world ravaged by global warming, climate change, and all of that, lots of people are moving away from some sources of energy production and opting for others. I'm sure you followed major projects in, is it Algeria? Morocco, others. In fact, I think the one in Algeria is said to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, when completed, in the world. Looking at our energy mix, hydro, gas, and others, are we thinking solar, for example, solar farms? What are the projects we can look forward to? How are we going to harness this? Because the sunshine is free, and thankfully, we have lots of it in Ghana.
Yes, indeed. Yesterday's program that I alluded to earlier, our scaling up renewable energy, is largely driven by solar. Okay, already we have built, they're building, I think they built 50, megawatts P of solar on the reservoir, and they're looking to scale it up to 250. We've done some solar, I believe, 15 megawatts in the Kaleo phase 1, working on phase 2. VRA itself is working to add some solar to their generation mix at Akosombo. Okay, and so that is a huge component of what it is that we are rolling out. One, to meet our Paris agreements, and also to meet our energy transition goals that we have set. Only last month, His Excellency the President at COP27 launched our energy transition framework as a country that then lays out what steps that we need to take in transportation, electricity generation, okay, between now and 2070, where we expect to achieve net zero, okay, which is carbon neutrality. We have to reduce our carbon footprint and also put in some measures that then enables us to neutralize. Okay, so afforestation, huge component of it, solar, wind, and significantly, Excellency the President has also approved Ghana to go nuclear. Okay, so if you see in the budget statement,
it's interesting because
yeah.
Nkrumah thought this in the 60s.
Absolutely.
And we're still
and we're still at it because
65 years
the
of
sabotage.
now thinking of.
Okay, and really the fear of potential abuse of nuclear. And we see it in Iran and other
nuclear
places.
requires proper handling.
Absolutely.
Even in terms of harnessing. I've listened to programs about the nuclear reactors and the reaction and even the waste, nuclear waste
absolutely.
Produced from energy production.
Absolutely.
And how to handle it. Even the developed economies are.
So it's important. But of course, I mean, if we had started the rollout, okay, earlier, I'm sure that there would have been a lot of learning that we would have, learned to ensure that we are able to deploy. Because solar, wind is not going to be able to provide you with the requisite base load that then helps you drive your industrialization agenda, okay? So it's important for us as we transition. Gas, which is powering about 80-85% of our plants now, okay, has been largely recognized as a cleaner hydrocarbon, is a transition fuel of choice. And so that's what we as a country, together with our hydro, have been using to as it were, meet our obligations. But going forward, as we add solar, wind, and other sources of renewable energy, we believe that having nuclear, which is a cleaner, much more cleaner energy source, would help in providing some base load that then helps with our industrialization agenda as a country.
Of course, you can't industrialize without energy.
Absolutely,
it's sine qua non. But tell me, especially as we're talking energy, let's come back to fuel sources. We've been told that you practically led a team to the United Arab Emirates. The president spoke about getting cheaper sources of fuel and all of that. Are they projects in Ewuana? We don't hear anything anymore. What happened?
Of course, you see, I don't know, was it on this show that I mentioned gold for energy, gold for oil?
Well, maybe not with me.
Oh, okay. So we've gone a long way.
Okay.
And indeed, His Excellency the President only last week mentioned as part of the conversations that have led to the decline of the dollar, the gold for oil program that we've announced on the 10th, 11th, 12th of January. The first consignment of finished products is going to arrive in this country as part of the...
Coming from where?
Oh, from the United Arab Emirates.
From the UAE?
Yes.
Between the 10th and the when?
11th, 12th January.
Of January. So let's say between the 10th and the 12th of January.
All the necessary agreements that needed to be executed has been executed. A lot more interest have been shown by other oil traders. My colleague, Honorable Amin Anta, returned from Morocco only yesterday. Signed an agreement with, I do not recall the name of the company, but it's a JV between...
Joint venture.
Yeah, that company, JV between Enoch and the Moroccan oil company. They have also signed on for the swap arrangement for oil and gold.
So is this
Really?
a G to G,
Yeah.
government to government
It's a
engagement?
G2B, okay? It's
Okay.
government to business.
Government to business,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and that's G2G conversations have also taken place. The surprise for me is the very moment that an announcement is made, then everybody expects that the next day you see it translated into action. But as with most programs, it's not an event. Okay, but you need to communicate so people know exactly what it is that government is doing. Okay, to give them comfort that it is not as if your leaders are sleeping on the job, but they are working to roll out a system program that would ensure that there's some complementary, not substitute. It's, for me, it's very significant that we drive home that point, that whatever it is that government is doing is intended to complement what it is that the private sector, who are operators within the space, are providing. Okay, just so that we can take some pressure off the dollar, okay, and make it available to other people who ordinarily would not be getting, and hence increasing the pressure on the cedi for it to depreciate. So these are steps that government have taken to ensure that we're able to complement what the private sector is doing to provide stability in the space. And it's been a very successful run so far. And in the fullness of time, like I indicated, we're all going to see that this is the fruit of the work that has gone into this over the period. Yes.
So at least we can look forward to January 2023 between the
Absolutely.
10th to the 12th of March.
No doubt at all.
We're expecting
January.
some crude, right? From the UAE.
Not crude.
Finished product.
Absolutely. Yes.
Finished
These
product.
are white products. Yes.
Okay, from the UAE.
Because you know our refinery has not been brought back on stream.
Yes.
Yes, there are some private sector refineries, Platon and Akwaba, that are operating in Tema, small scale. But TOR is the one that can produce or refine the volumes that would meet about 40-50% of our demand. And that is being worked on. Hopefully very soon we'll hear what the outcome of the conversations that have been going on has yielded. And for TOR to come back on stream, the expectation of management, okay, at the last meeting that we held at the Office of His Excellency the President, was that by end February they expect that they would start refining products at TOR. That
at TOR.
Yes.
And February next year.
Yes. That said, the expectation of management.
Okay.
As they communicated at a meeting, I believe it was last week or so. And so there's been some conversation that has been ongoing, saying that there's been issues here and there, but they're looking to fine tune and sign so that by end February, TOR will come back on. So give or take.
Is that to say the debt overhang, the debt challenges of TOR, the logistical challenges, the leadership challenges have all been ironed out? I mean, TOR, we can talk about TOR for the whole show.
There you go again.
Have they been ironed out?
I said it's a process.
It's a process.
It's ongoing.
Okay.
And the expectation
right.
is that by end February, they would come back on stream.
And February 2023?
Yes.
Okay. So we can expect that from February, let's say by February, March, TOR should be refining
all things being
again.
equal, yes.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to push for that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I like that. Hopefully in February we'll have a conversation again and see
my boss is
where TOR is.
Is a machine, you know that.
Nah, boy.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
He's driving all of us to ensure that we bring some traction that then enables us to meet our expectations, or the expectation of the people of Ghana of the energy ministry.
Let me just re-echo this, just to ensure that we're on the same page. 10th to 12th March, we're getting
January.
Finished,
January. I don't know why you want
we're
to
getting,
go to March.
We're getting, my apologies, it's good for all of us if it's January. We're getting refined product from the UAE.
Absolutely.
We've
As part
just
of-
signed some sort of agreement with a business in Morocco.
Yes.
And we're engaging the Moroccan government as well
Absolutely.
to ensure that
Yes.
moving forward, we can engage in same with them.
In fact,
so
a
we are
lot-
paying
a
for
lot
all
more-
of these
a
with
lot-
gold. Just
a
to
lot-
clarify, are we
yes,
paying
yes.
with gold?
Yes, yes.
We're paying with gold.
A lot more people, traders have expressed interest in participating
From
in
where?
that program
Traders from where?
across the world.
From where? I mean,
Across.
Russia?
Oh, you know,
Saudi Arabia?
You know all the big oil traders.
I just mentioned
And
some of
you
them.
see-
You've not said it.
You see, it's really not anything strange or, ordinarily, if all the remittances from the export of our natural resources did not have retention agreements that allowed them to keep the funds outside, or a significant chunk of it outside, but rather brought them into Ghana, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But that's not the situation. And so what government has done is to say, okay, Bank of Ghana should be in a position to buy through PMMC a certain percentage of that gold produced in Ghana. And then they then will swap that through an arrangement with third parties for gold. For finished products to complement what it is that comes into the country regularly. That's all. It's a very simple, straightforward transaction.
Some have said that, with the situation, with the price of gold fluctuating, gold is pretty stable, but it has its own fluctuations. And we've seen what oil has risen
Thank
to
you.
in this
But
year. for
it also
example.
fluctuates.
So,
Every commodity traded across the world, the price is not fixed.
so is it practical to use gold
Of course.
in exchange for this?
Why not? Why not?
Even when our currency has stabilized to...
But that's why I said to you
The point,
that
if it gets even better, would it still make sense to go with
But
gold?
of course, you need to realize that I said right from the very outset that it's not intended to substitute.
Right.
It's only complementing.
Okay.
And so people can still source their dollars and buy finished products and bring it to their country.
In the end,
No issues.
Just tell me. So I'm sure we have projections about, look, since you're talking about complementation and all of that, maybe we want to do 20% of our purchases generally moving forward as a country with gold. What's the plan in that?
Well, the plan is that, of course, private sector people, government cannot put in this arrangement for. Correct? But BOST is state-owned. And so BOST can be supported to do this arrangement for the volume of commodity, which is in the region of about 30-40%,
Okay.
to come in to, as it were, complement what the private sector BDCs or BIDEX do. That's all.
Okay. Let's
So let the naysayers who felt that what is this strange arrangement that we are being told about.
maybe when we
I want to
see
speak
when we
calm.
see what
They
it
should
yields,
not be. It's not
they
like
should
that.
be patient. I see. Well, I'm sure they're patiently waiting for the finished products that will be coming in,
No problem.
in January.
I've indicated to you.
And to see TOR up and running in February, and maybe you will convince your naysayers. What do you think?
Sure, I'm up for that bet.
Okay.
No worries at all.
A few more aspects of energy, and we'll broaden the conversation
Yeah, sure.
as we wind out. The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, we are told, is in the process of computing necessary figures as they do quarterly for between the 1st and 31st of January. There's a lot to say on that, but I'd like to find out from where you sit as Deputy Energy Minister, are we likely to look forward to more utility tariff adjustments upward or stabilization? Especially in the course of this year and the few things that have happened.
Benjamin.
And the hikes. You know what?
No problem.
The Ghana Water Company Limited requested, then Electricity Company requested, among others.
No problem.
What can we look forward to next year?
Well, obviously the components that go into the pricing, exchange rate, right? A huge chunk of it is the exchange rate. And so if the exchange rate is where it is, and it's expected to trend downwards even further, then you can rest assured that there won't be any significant increase, if any,
right,
in tariffs going forward. But it's important that we all understand that this policy of quarterly adjustments has been there, okay, except that for some reason the PURC has not implemented it as is expected. But government has committed that, look, if we are to ensure that our utilities are economically sustainable, then it's important that their tariffs are adjusted regularly or as per the formula that is already in place, just so that they do not suffer unduly. Because when that happens, it turns out to be government that then is called upon to bail them out. Indeed, and in fact, ECG, because of the IPP contracts that they've signed, okay, which they are unable to pay because their collections can not under any circumstances pay for the obligations that they have contracted. Government at all times come to their aid. Indeed, in 2022, government spent almost 4 billion cedis for national education, ECG, IPP payments and all that, okay? And so it's important that you streamline that space to ensure that they are able to stand on their feet and you know, most especially collect the monies that are due them and to be economically viable.
Just to wrap on the energy conversation before we get into broader waters, I saw the story today on the back page of the Daily Graphic, and I just wanted to run it by you. Energy commissioners use moratorium on defective appliances, and according to the story, importers and dealers in the electronic appliances that have not met the minimum performance standards have been given a 1-year moratorium to ensure that such products meets the required standards. According to officials of the Commission and the Ghana Standards Authority, the move was to ensure that only appliances that had met energy efficiency regulations for electrical appliances in 2022 would be allowed into the Ghanaian market. I found it interesting because a lot of the time, the products we see, some of them very old and contributing to our greenhouse gases and all of that. Is this a policy that the Energy Ministry spearheaded or something that what's the
involvement? Of course, the Energy Commission is an
definitely, but
indeed, this year
on its own, it will come out with its own programs.
That's why. They with the assistance of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament, passed 21, I believe, energy standard regulations, okay, covering electrical appliances, sewing machines, and all sorts of things, okay, and so the expectation would have been that immediately after the regulations come into force, the standards will be applied. That, I suspect, is what the story is referencing, that they've given some 1-year moratorium to ensure that, of course, public education and all that goes ahead, just so that it can be enforced to ensure that some sanity is brought within the space with respect to the appliances that these regulations cover that are imported or manufactured in the country meet.
Finally, on energy, I have to take you all the way back to 2020, and to be fair,
yes,
you were not. You were not deputy energy minister then.
No, I wasn't.
You were not, and in fact, your boss was not the energy minister then. It was John Peter Amewu.
No problem.
At the time, but if you look at the Daily Graphic of March 13, 2020, you would find a story about how Energy Minister John Peter Amewu had said that the ministry had started a project to improve energy efficiency and manage demand to drive down the amount households paid for electricity. So what was done? Considering the major shortfalls and all of that, the project dubbed the Energy Conservation and Demand Side Management involved the distribution of light-emitting diode bulbs to metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies for onward distribution to households at no cost to the households. Additionally, the minister indicated that some 12 million of these energy-saving bulbs had already been procured by the ministry at a cost of 200 million Ghana cedis. My concern had to do, at the time, with the fact that even on a high side, these bulbs would not cost up to 8 cedis in 2020 at the time of the project. But even if you did the math and gave a total of 12, cedis to the project, the total of 12 million bulbs should cost us no more than 96 million if you were using 8 cedis. I had so many concerns about them. He explained that it would go all the way to metropolitan assemblies and all of that. But whatever became of that project? Whatever became of it? I say this because I followed the news on this and nothing, I never heard any conclusivity about, okay, so we've rolled out, we've distributed to X number and the sum of 200 million. What happened to that project?
Well, I do not know the details with respect to figures and how you then make comments.
My calculations, You can go back. That's why I quoted to you the daily graphic of March 13th, so that you can always go back.
If my recollection is right, those LED bulbs that were distributed across the country.
I see.
Members of parliament were given some.
So they were distributed?
Of course, they were. MMDCs, households were given through, and so unless it was a continuing project, that would be still running at the ministry, and I'm not so sure that over the past year and a half.
So if you have no idea, it means likely it's been concluded.
That's what I would imagine, because in all the budgets that we have done, including the most recent one, of the Solar Lantern program, the LPG for development program that we are running, does not include this LED distribution. And so, but I recall in 2020 that I was a beneficiary and I distributed it across households in my constituency.
But you see, that is one problem I usually have with policies of different governments and all of that. We had spoken about 200 million Ghana cedis. Where is the account in the end that maybe I'll have to trigger the RTI to go in?
Please
maybe I'll have to trigger it to check.
But you see...
But when you've done something like this, major, you should be able to come and say, when you were telling us that you would have assemblies would receive 50,000 bulbs, while municipal and district assemblies would receive 40,000 and 30,000 units. At the end of such a project, if it has ended, you should be able to say, your 200 million Ghana cedis as taxpayers' money. This is what
that would be the work
expended it on.
Of an agency of state, the Auditor General's Department, because every procurement that MMDAs, carry through, in fact, every expenditure, is audited.
Indeed.
And so it cannot be the case that because he hasn't come to AM show to tell you what transpired with respect
public information, put it out there. I mean, it's an option.
You can ask as part of your
I'm saying that's
no issue. But I'm saying
with policies like this, what stops you from putting it in a major paper like the Daily Graphic?
No, if it's a suggestion,
as a form of
I don't have a problem. If it's a suggestion that you're putting across, it's something that we can chew on, But the fact that it's not done when there are several official publications, including the Auditor General's report that are released yearly, that would cover these accounting audits are there, I would assume that should satisfy
we're both
the legal requirement of
maybe we should
but of course, I mean,
the facts of this. So
we need to, please.
I am noting it down, and I'll speak to my research team, Raymond Akakpo and Co, and see what we can do with this. But let's quickly, in the next few minutes, we must end the conversation.
And Kojo and Winston accosted me, essentially ambushed me this morning on my way here.
Oh, I see.
And put me on the spot. We dealt with the issues.
On what?
On economy.
I see.
Finance minister.
I have a few, in fact, that is where I'm going. This debt exchange situation and the TUC. Yesterday, there was some meetings slated for them between government and their side. And there was no quorum on the end of government, and things did not happen. The meeting was not held. But the debt exchange and the way it's been sprung on, ordinary Ghanaians, extended from 22nd to the 30th, and the Labour and their position that, look, don't touch our pension funds. We are not interested in anything. You've created your mess. Don't let us suffer for it. What's your position?
It's disheartening when I hear.
And by the way, let me just add that with the TUC, for example, they are over 500,000.
No problem. When I hear comments like "you've created your mess," what does that really mean? Because if we delve down, line by line, on all the key expenditure items that government has incurred, we can flip it and ask whether what the outcome would have been. For example, let's go to the specifics. If government had said that, look, this energy sector payments, Akufo-Addo had no hand in contracting those IPPs, and so he's not going to borrow 17 billion.
But there's a simple answer to that. There's continuity in governance.
Thank you very much.
Other administrations have also inherited things.
I agree. That's why I get worried when we make comments like "you've created your mess." Because if this government, indeed, it had no choice in the matter. Those bills had to be paid just so that the economy can run. Fact. Recall, and of course, banking sector. I'm asking myself that if the Akufo-Addo government had said, hey, this mess, banks being insolvent, is none of my business. So I'm not going to deposit your money at whatever bank. If the bank collapses and you lose your money, nobody cares. What would have been the consequences of those decisions?
Some would also ask, what have been the consequences of getting involved? 25 billion Ghana cedis, thereabouts, invested, and still more going practically on a daily basis. We know of the Atuesian issue and what he now has to pay to the state, but some say we're still paying for this, and was it worth it in the end?
So let's just say it wasn't worth it. And so government should not have put 25 billion to save the deposits of 4.3 million Ghanaians. What would have happened?
What would have happened? Some say we had alternatives.
Like what?
We could have prevented it.
Like what? Recall that liquidity support had been provided to the banks as part of the attempt to resolve the banking sector problem by the previous administration.
Exactly.
What happened to those monies? What was the outcome of that intervention? It yielded nothing.
Well, practically.
And so, look, but what did it yield? So when the government took a decision in the manner that it did, and I hear people say you collapse banks. Really? UT Bank and Capital Bank were assumed under GCB. Correct? Was that a collapse of banks? The rest of them.
Now, if I'm
no, hold on.
If I'm
hold
correct,
on. Hold
the Consolidated
on.
Bank,
Thank you very much.
Ghana, right?
Of course, with that, there was going to be some restructuring. But government had to provide the funding to save the depositors' funds. So the Ghanaian depositor was really at the end, or the persons that the government had in mind when those decisions were being taken, to protect them. So all those expenditures have been incurred. Now to deal with it, and I still believe that rather than the government putting it as part of our total debt, of course, purely accounting, I agree, keeping it below the line as it did in the 2019 budget to inform all of us that, look, my regular budget cycle, above the line, these are what my regular revenue and expenditure performance is. But these extraordinary expenditures that have been incurred, this is my plan to pay it off. But at all times, keep it there. I think consistently that's what government should have done. But of course, subsequently, the finance ministry took a decision that, hey, look, put it all together.
So back to the point, because we're pressed for time.
Yeah,
what Labour is saying, how do you find that?
So we are where we are. No, I empathize with them. All the documentation that I've seen really doesn't put pensions in jeopardy necessarily.
And that's part of their problem, the non-engagement before these decisions, so that there are grey areas.
I don't know. So the question, was this really sprung on anybody? Because consistently in the communication, government had indicated that, look, there was going to be a debt restructuring of our debt. That would include external, internal, indeed. And in fact, our friends in the opposition went over and above themselves to create some panic that, hey, there's going to be a haircut. People are going to lose their investments, and back and forth. And the president had to come in his address to assure Ghanaians that, look, nobody was going to take a haircut. And so subsequently,
but Ghanaians didn't suspect that pensions would come into the fray.
But the pension,
I mean, that is like a no-go area.
You see, there are people who are going to go on pension next year. And so question is, when they go on pension, will they receive their pension benefits under the debt exchange program? Yes. People are going to go on pension next 2 years. Question is, because of the debt exchange program, would their pensions that will be due them in 2 years' time be taken away? No. So really, because government recognizes that this debt exchange program that is rolling out would impact the ability of the fund managers to meet their obligations as and when they fall due.
Right.
And so the finance ministry has announced measures that will be put in place to ensure that they meet those obligations as and when they fall due. So really,
recall,
I'm coming.
Get to the facts of the question.
So I agree. I empathize with them, and I think that when the engagement, which, as far as I'm concerned, is continuing, okay, is held, they would appreciate where it is that we are.
Okay.
Mess somebody has created, I disagree.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that we are in some economic difficulty, which then will require us to go for an IMF program.
Okay.
Part of the
I think that has been made
conditions,
clear. The finance minister himself has said that without this debt exchange, it would be pretty problematic for our
Absolutely.
IMF engagement.
And so,
that point
we have to work together to see how we position our country to go back onto the growth path.
All right. This message comes through. I'll just name the person D. It says, it's not true that any energy-saving bulbs were distributed. I have about 10 households across the country in several districts. Not even one household reported receiving any bulbs.
Okay,
that is his commentary.
I agree.
But you've admitted that you don't know much about that.
No, I'm coming. I said that was a beneficiary. I got some, and I distributed it. I said it. I'm saying that. Does that mean that every household in Sekondi got some of those bulbs?
No, I get.
Obviously not.
It's a stretch.
So really,
but let's. So two crucial issues I want us to look at to wrap the conversation. The first has to do. The last issue will take us to Parliament. Some of the things that have happened in Parliament. But first of all, the Burkina Faso development and the Wagner Group and what our president said. Look, we've spoken to the security people. Professor Henning, Professor Vladimir Mchidanso, and all of that. Some say we've stirred a hornet's nest when we really had no problem, no business going in that direction. For you, Akufo-Addo is your head of government, our leader, but do you feel that was a gaffe, that was wrong?
Why was it a gaffe?
I'm asking you.
That was
do you
no gaffe
feel?
at all.
It's a question.
See, sometimes I see, the fact that your view is not what is articulated doesn't make an alternative view wrong. That's what I will say to the experts that you say you've spoken to.
In our world where we seem to have a certain Cold War simmering again, worse in a worse form than we've seen.
You think the president,
in the 80s and 90s.
The president made those comments out of 10? It wasn't based on proper briefing from his security experts.
Some say it looks as though it were not even meant to come out, that it was meant to be private like that, and it came out. So you would ask yourself about what engagement happened before he said that.
Meant to be private what? What does that mean?
Restricted to the
There's
meeting.
a threat.
Okay.
That this country faces. Indeed, the government of Ghana is spending huge sums of money building forward operating bases in the north. Why? And so if the intelligence that is received speaks to these matters, you and I don't know the internal engagements that he's had with the Burkinabés already. But bringing it on the global spotlight was a gaffe. Like, seriously.
So you're meeting with the Americans in Washington.
Look.
And you're speaking to them about a Russian group in Burkina Faso.
But of course, yes. And so if
that is, it's not even the Russian government. It is not. It's a group, and he calls them mercenaries. And look at the reaction. The Burkinabés then withdraw their ambassador to us, and then they call our own ambassador.
Is it unusual?
They are obviously not happy.
Is it unusual?
They are a neighbor, and they are obviously not happy.
Is it unusual for ambassadors to be recalled? It
is not usual in good times, in times when there are no frosty relationships. It's a sign of some frosty.
But of course, the indication from the president was clearly what he believed to be the threat that our country faced.
What was the threat? Tell me.
Of these people who are seeking to infiltrate our country from the north.
What evidence do we have to that effect?
Oh, so you want me to provide you with evidence here?
No, tell me what you know. I mean, what evidence do we have?
I don't have the evidence because I'm not the president. But I'm saying that the president would not make these statements out of 10. Just for the sake of it. There was basis, obviously.
Some say he was just trying to court favor with the United States and likely secure an IMF deal and all of that. So pandering and saying so many things that really don't wash.
I've been in meetings with the officials of the German government. Last week, I was privileged to be in a meeting with the British government at the Vice President's office. They are all committed to supporting Ghana go through this IMF program successfully. The American government obviously would support Ghana in the IMF program by telling them about some security threat that this country faces amounts to courting favor. Let's elevate the conversation.
All right.
I am of the view that people do not think that the president should have conveyed that information where he did. They are entitled to their view. But the fact that the president chose to do it where he did it doesn't make him wrong.
Okay. Let's wrap the conversation in Parliament and take off from where you started. So we are in a defense security quagmire in a way. Coups in neighboring countries, threats of terrorism and all of that. In the midst of that, it's interesting, isn't it? Curious that the Speaker of Parliament has to come up and speak for the Defense Ministry, which has got just about 19% of allocations to it, 81% outstanding of over the 3.4 billion, I think, that it needs. Especially as the point is made about our security situation and our disbursements not going to specific ministries. And the Speaker having to call out, I'm just looking for the story in today's daily graphic. The Finance Minister, here it is. He says, It is sad when I really read and saw that approximately 81% of the budget on goods and services had not been released to the Ministry of Defense, and we're looking at an approval of 3.742 billion. And he says this is not the way to go. The practice of the Ministry of Finance not releasing all the budgetary allocations for the Defense Ministry does not augur well for the safety and security of the individual and our community. What is your quick take on that?
Every ministry is given allocations based on the expectation of the resource envelope that would be available to the exchequer in the course of the year to pay for three components mainly: compensation, goods and services, and then capital expenditure. Right? And these are the components of the budget of every MMDA. So if the compensation, which is usually to pay for the wages and salaries of the employees, are given, which almost always is met in full. Goods and services, depending on what comes into the coffers, is what is released. So no ministry, none, definitely not the energy ministry where I work from,
right,
receives all its allocations in the year. In fact, I am a member of the Constitutional.
Is that a practice we shouldn't rethink?
But you see, that's the question. So you budget
because you have the needs of the ministry versus where we find ourselves financially.
Benjamin.
The Minister of Finance is known to hold sometimes. In fact, I had an interaction with, I've forgotten whom recently, and they said that, I think it was Professor Gachi, that in the coming year, it will even be steeper, and that some ministries would be lucky to get even 40% of their budgeted or budgetary allocations. Does that mean that these ministries will literally have to fight the finance minister?
Well, if the revenues, if the projected revenues go in as expected, then I would expect that the Ministry of Finance will release those sums of money to the ministries, departments, and agencies. But if the revenue doesn't perform, then you would expect that the Ministry of Finance will manage the releases so that everybody gets something that will enable them meet their recurrent expenditures for the year.
Okay.
That's the reality of every budget cycle, I believe, since Kwame Nkrumah's time.
Ayo. let's wrap it with this. I'll put all of them together, just one bit on Parliament, and then we can say goodbye. So the first one, not keeping government in check, blame Parliament. That's Minority Leader. And he says Parliament must accept some blame and responsibility for not keeping the executive arm of government in check in the performance of its functions, including excessive borrowing. And he doesn't limit it to just this administration, but he says especially this administration. There's also the National Cathedral, and I think that will be, there's the Subin MP, entry, who says that, look, as majority MPs, he's reiterating they can't be threatened. There's been talk about the powers that be in the executive trying to tell people that you pursue this line, you will lose your seat, primaries, and all of that. I'm sure you heard him very ferociously.
I heard him
yesterday making that point that he wants to defend the soul of the party, and it's not about Akufo-Addo. He has nothing against the president, but this promise must be kept. And finally, the National Cathedral and the 80 million Ghana cedis that has not been approved twice. How it even falls under the tourism ministry has been questioned. That the chief director was not able to answer questions. The minister was not able to give account of what the 80 million would go into. 3 issues to take a quick look at, and it's a wrap. Parliament. You can start
Eugene, my good friend, is entitled to his view, but I disagree.
The Subin MP.
Yes.
Right.
I disagree. I know that a majority took a certain position.
Mm-hmm. Was that your position as well?
I've said on your show, on Joy...
This is JoyNews.
This is JoyNews that I don't think majority decision means unanimous decision, because I personally don't think that with all that has transpired, okay, I don't see why the finance minister should be blamable. I don't see it. But of course, people have a different view, and they are entitled to it. And I'm
So
sure
you think Kenoforiata should stay?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Of course.
Okay.
The decision rests solely in the bosom of the appointing authority, which is His Excellency the President. So
okay.
really,
Point
my
made.
view doesn't matter.
Okay.
But so that's what it is. I mean, I don't believe that Parliament of Ghana failed to pass, in accordance with Section 22 of the Public Financial Management Act, a certain revenue measure that would fund the expenditures that the Parliament itself had approved, which led to a run on our economy, which led to the downgrade initial. Can be attributable to the finance minister. I don't think so at all.
Okay, so point made there. The National Cathedral and 80 million rejected.
You see,
I remember having a conversation with you some time back, and you said that
the cathedral,
National Cathedral is not for Akufo-Addo.
But is it for? Is it for?
Well, the question is,
it for?
did he campaign on that? No. Did Ghanaians ask him for a National Cathedral? No. When you say it's not for Akufo-Addo, but the point is, let's focus on that one. We can discuss it. The 80 million that has been rejected, doesn't it tell?
Well, that's the committee's recommendation. It will come to the plenary. And I believe strongly that regardless of what your views are on the National Cathedral, I think that it's a good monument that we ought to have as a nation. This is a country that holds all important state functions at a car park. Did you hear me?
I heard you.
We hold important state functions at the car park of the State House.
So we can't find anywhere else to do that but a National Cathedral.
Show me if we had.
So within the precincts of Parliament, we can't
If we had a place to hold important state functions, why are we doing it at the car park?
Is that the only
I'm
option
asking you a simple question.
No, I'm asking you back. Is that the only option we have?
Do we have an option? If we have other options, why are we doing it at the car park? I want to know. So for me, so why are we not using it?
It's state run.
Why
don't we use that?
Let's not trivialize some of these things, because we all sat in this country. When President Kufuor decided to build the Jubilee House, we had all sorts of comments, including suggestion that they would turn it into a hen coop when they come into government. When they came, they used it. The National Cathedral, if you've looked at the purpose,
I have,
and all the things that it's intended to serve, only posterity would judge.
Okay, we'll have to wrap the.
So for me, I do not even understand. So is it the suggestion? Is it the suggestion of the people who are vehemently opposed to it that the monies that have gone in there should go to waste?
Some have said it can be repurposed.
To do what? Have you been there?
Into an academic institution, into something else.
So academic institution, what? That's what? We should build a campus.
Someone suggested once that it should be repurposed into
President Kufuor said it.
Better governance and other things.
President Kufuor said it.
There are options.
President Kufuor, that sometimes we behave as if we know the cost of everything, but the value of.
Bloomberg, by the way, recently said that by building the National Cathedral in these times, we're acting like a rich Arabian sultanate in the Gulf. When in fact we're a developing country with lots of
Bloomberg, why is it not a journalist who wrote it?
Oh yeah, I'm just saying that
it's not a human being who wrote it. So that's his view.
Okay,
I don't have one. But I will urge my fellow Christians across the country.
Right.
This project, His Excellency the President, should largely be coming from our contributions. I believe
But
strongly.
we are seeing the state
and I'm controversial. Of course, the
a
state.
whole lot when we're told that the state would not put in anything.
Who said the state?
Then we put in seed money.
Who said it? Where did you hear that
now
from? Show me where it was said that the state.
Different where? This was not going to be a taxpayer issue.
But the government was going to do what?
From the state coffers. But
the government was going to do what? The land was going to provide the land.
Yes, the land was going to be
provided. Then the seed funding.
25 million. That was provided. Now, how much have we expended?
Where did you see the 25
but this was a sum that we all discussed on from Okija Blakwa to confirmations from the board and all of that.
That what?
That money had been paid. Have you forgotten? When the finance ministry and it was said that it wasn't even in the budget.
But or at the time that the Ministry of Finance had given them 25 million. Was it said that was how much government was going to contribute? That's a question I'm asking.
No, I'm not saying
please,
that. So that amount was paid.
See.
To what extent are we going to continue paying seed money?
I personally, I think that right from the very beginning, His Excellency the President should have just made budgetary provision for it to build it because it's a state property.
Okay, point made. But
Haruna, my very good friend, the minority leader.
Right.
Sometimes I get surprised at the kinds of things that they say.
Okay.
We approve budgets and we allow for some deficit financing. Right? Save for 2020 in the COVID year. And I believe in 2021, where the deficit was exceeded because of the pandemic. Did the finance minister not operate within that 2017, 18, 19?
Point made.
So what was this talk?
We have to go. This one, though.
But of course, I'm glad he admits that he himself probably has been sleeping.
Well, that we can discuss some other day. Ada Blonde says, please ask him whether the haircut will affect their ex gratia. Maybe you answer that for me. Would you like to take a haircut on your ex gratia payments? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Why not?
Okay. And on that note,
already, I'm taking a hit.
Andrew Egyapa.
I'm taking a hit of 30% in my emoluments.
Right.
Gladly.
So if your ex gratia is also cut, no
issue at all.
All right. Andrew Egyapa Mercer is Deputy Energy Minister and Member of Parliament for 2nd D. He was gracious enough to join us this morning. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Well, we'll get the latest on the Boku situation shortly after the break. We understand about 6 people have died following renewed clashes there. We'll also hear from major stakeholders on that issue. What is it with the Mampusis and the Kusasis that keeps re-triggering this entire development? We'll be bringing you that after the break. But before we go for that break, the Frital Joy FM party in the park is the perfect place for your family. The date, December the 26th, 2022, venue Ebri Botanical Gardens. You know how we do. The time is 9 a.m. till you decide to knock off. The rate is a cool 100 Ghana cedis for a family of 6. Now you can purchase your tickets from the Joy FM front desk or dial the short code *713*003#. I repeat, *713*003#. Select one, select Joy Party in the Park, or call 0265 125 3188 for inquiries. The Joy FM Party in the Park is sponsored by Frital Sunflower Cooking Oil. Enjoy the goodness in tasty meals. Fortune Rice, always on point, just like mom. Alliance Life Insurance, we secure your future syntax tanks. Ice Strong, Air Strong, Air Tough. And supported by ATL, bringing fabrics to life. Mobile Doctors, Ghana, the doctor at your home. Ghana AIDS Commission. Condomless sex is risky. If it's not on, it's definitely not in. This reminds me of an advert from way back. Coa Mixture, the medicine that works, and it's all about the Joy FM Family Party in the Park, your #1 family outdoor event. For tickets reservation, please call 0540 106 466. We take a break and return with all the action on Boku. Stay.